That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
The British Constitution provides that taxation and representation shall go together. Therefore, women taxpayers are entitled to vote.
I have a dream today. Let freedom ring, and if America is to be a great nation, this must become true.
I'm your host again, Tony Kern. And in season 2, what we hope to do is take everything we learned in season 1, add in a few of your ideas as listeners and recommendations, and drive even deeper into the mysteries of human performance, especially in the modern world. Our vision for this season is to shatter the glass ceiling of conventional thinking and rocket into the exhilarating, raw, and untamed universe of boundless human potential, or something close to that at least. So let me start with a question. I use music for a lot of things, but have you ever heard a song, or maybe read a book or looked at a piece of art, and you instantly knew who was doing it, right? For me, I'm a big guitar guy, so Santana, Eric Clapton, Bonnie Raitt with her slide guitar. When I read maybe a couple of lines from Hemingway, or when I look at art, Andy Warhol, you instantly know that they were the authors or they were the artists that did this. How do we know that, right? We recognize them through their workmanship. Something unique to them as masters of their craft, but there's something more personal. There seems to be like a signature on top of their master craftsmanship. So today we're going to start with this term that sounds mundane, but I think it's anything but: workmanship. Why start our new season with workmanship? Because at least in my mind, it's the visible outcome of everything we want to talk about, right? Our purpose, our motivations, our passion, skill, curiosity, inquisitiveness, as well as our barriers to greatness, things like distractions or ambivalence, apathy, sloppiness. All of it rolled up into one thing: what we produce. There's been a lot of talk lately about a lack of workmanship and quality, even in the most unlikely places like aviation engineering and healthcare. But it's not just them, and it's not just there. Poor workmanship seems to be an infectious disease, and it seems to be everywhere. It's also not just about your job performance. I mean, what would workmanship look like for parenting or gardening, right? In your social engagements or your hobbies. So let's get started, like we always do, with the Blue Threat Proverb of the Week. This week it's number 8, and I think it's perfect. Blue Threat Proverb number 8 says, "The plain things are the main things." What we do every day builds our habits. It teaches us what to expect from ourselves. Because you see, the way you do anything significantly impacts the way we do everything. And we'd like to decouple those sometimes because maybe we want to, go do weed whacking of the island out in front of my house here, which I just did a few minutes ago. And I've got 25 minutes, I'm in a hurry, and I start to go back and forth, and it's not even, it's not perfect. But I stopped myself thinking of this podcast, and I said, no, take your time. If you got to come back and finish it later, you will. Because when you look at this, you want to be proud of it. Right? So the concept of workmanship transcends the basic idea of being good at your job. It's multifaceted. It's an ethos that envelops not only our technical skills that's required for a particular role, but also the psychological, emotional, behavioral, even spiritual elements that contribute to true mastery and, quite honestly, to fulfillment in one's life, whatever that life is or you want it to be. So in essence, workmanship is the bridge between mundane execution of tasks and an artful contribution to your life, your community, and your personal legacy. It's your personal signature. It says, I did this. So I want to go into a little bit more depth here in these various aspects. I mentioned psychological, behavioral, spiritual. So let's walk through these one at a time. The psychological dimension of workmanship is rooted in the mindset and attitudes we bring to our work, whatever we consider that to be. And it involves kind of a continuous commitment to getting better, not just in the quality of the output, but also in how we get there, maybe the processes that lead to it. The Japanese have a word for it, kaizen, which is loosely defined as continuous improvement, but it's a lot more than that. But it aligns closely with what we're talking about with workmanship. A craftsman with a kaizen mindset sees every task, every part of every task, no matter how small, as an opportunity to get better and grow toward mastery, right? So a craftsman with a kaizen growth mindset thrives on challenges and sees failure not as evidence of a lack of skill or a lack of intelligence, but as a springboard for growth and to stretch their existing abilities. So when we're talking about mindset, we should also talk a little bit about the emotional aspect of it. And emotionally, workmanship is about purpose, it's about passion, it's about pride in our work, right? It's about caring deeply for the craft and finding joy in the act of working within it, the act of creation inside the craft, right? This emotional connection not only enhances personal satisfaction, but it elevates the quality of everything that you do. When we're emotionally invested in our work, the more likely we are to go the extra mile, to pay attention to detail, and produce work, again, in quotations, that resonates with other people on an emotional level, right? And so that brings into play something we've talked about before, emotional intelligence. And that plays a pivotal role. It's the ability to recognize, understand, and manage our own emotions toward the work, as well as sometimes the emotions of others that are helping with the work, to help us navigate the highs and lows of creative processes and to collaborate better with others, but mostly to maintain a positive, motivating environment, even under acute stress, tight timelines, occasional failures. So that's the emotional aspect of workmanship. The behavioral aspect of workmanship manifests itself in habits, right? The discipline, consistency, and professional ethics we apply to our work. It's about showing up on every task, every day, at our best, and then ready to bring our best, give our best, regardless of how we feel about the task, its importance or lack of importance. And this requires a bit of self-regulation and commitment to excellence that goes beyond the obligation of getting the work done. Right? It's the difference between doing just enough to get by and striving maybe to exceed expectations of others, but even ourselves, right? Not for any external reward, but for the pure satisfaction of knowing that we've done our best under tough conditions. It also involves a sense of responsibility to your team, to your community, your family, and it recognizes that our work doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's not just for us. It impacts others and maybe even the world around us. So therefore, a true craftsman has to behaviorally and emotionally consider the broader applications of their work and strives to contribute positively to everything, not just for themselves, but to others as well. So this last aspect can sound a little woo-woo, but I don't think it is, because it's really important to me. It's the spiritual aspect of work. The spiritual aspect of workmanship may be the most profound. It's about finding meaning and purpose in our work, right? So in Colossians 3:23, the Apostle Paul, by the way, he's a guy who knew a lot about being a crappy human being before he was a great human being. Anyway, Colossians 3:23, he writes, "Whatever you might do, work from the soul as to the Lord and not to men." Whatever you might do, anything, Work from the soul as to the Lord and not to men. What this equates to is leaning into your work as a commitment to excellence for its own sake, a desire to contribute to things like beauty, truth, craftsmanship. Okay? So this dimension, the spiritual dimension of workmanship, elevates your craft, whatever the craft, from a mere job or a task into a calling, right? A vital personal expression of your identity and what you value. And it's what motivates a craftsman to persevere through the challenges, to refine their skills, and to contribute their unique voice to the overall tapestry of the human endeavor, right? All right, so it's time for a new feature in season 2. We're calling it a step back in time. And as a historian, you may not know that about me, but I used to be a director of military history at the Air Force Academy, and I love all things historical. This is cool, at least for me. I hope it's cool for you. And we're going to get to that in just a minute, right after a word from our sponsor.
Have you ever finished the latest bestseller on habits or personal performance and asked, yeah, okay, but how? All the improvements you visualize while reading the books require one thing to achieve in your own life: deliberate practice, a new way of focusing attention inside the routine to drive consistent improvement with every experience. Focused on getting the biggest impact from your career development opportunities, the Deliberate Practice of Professionalism course from Convergent Performance teaches you the steps and requirements to achieve improvement and mastery of your targets. Discover how deliberate practice can springboard your improvement efforts, no matter what they might be or your current skill level. Join us on our website at convergentperformance.com and click the link for e-learning to sign up for this exciting program today.
All right, welcome back. So a step back in time, I tried to pick a good one that I could use with some very specific examples that you could relate to, somebody you'd know. And so let's look at one of the greatest master craftsmen in history, Leonardo da Vinci. Worked in the 1400s, early 1400s. And so I want to incorporate some specific examples of da Vinci's work and how it enriches our understanding to this day of workmanship. And I think it'll allow us to see how the psychological, emotional, behavioral, and spiritual elements kind of come together in tangible outputs that are clearly visible to others. Da Vinci's life was a testament to the ethos of craftsmanship. And he seamlessly blended all these dimensions in creations that continue to captivate the world 600 years after he died. Right? So example 1, I'd like to go to the psychological aspect, and it's called the Vitruvian Man. I know you've all seen it. It's and for those of you that are listening, you're not going to see the image that we just brought up on the screen, but it's a pen and ink drawing, and it absolutely epitomizes the psychological dimension of workmanship because it demonstrates his relentless quest to understand the interrelations between art and science. Right? The drawing basically illustrates the ideal human body. Proportionally, as described by, who was that Roman guy? Vitruvius. Vitruvius was a Roman architect. Anyway, this represents Leonardo's deep dive into the study of human anatomy. But he used geometry, proportion, mathematics, right? It reflected a mindset that values knowledge just for the practical application, but more for the intrinsic ability to reveal beauty and harmony of the natural world. Leonardo's integration of all these things, math, art, science, in this drawing illustrates, to me at least, his profound belief in learning and improvement and getting it right, putting his personal signature on it. That's a core aspect of the psychological dimension of workmanship. So let's move on to the emotional aspect. And I almost stuck this down into the spiritual aspect, but I figured it'd be better to use this for the emotional one. Many of you have seen this painting. You may not have known Da Vinci did it, but it's called The Last Supper. And it showcases the emotions that he's able to represent through art. Iconic work of art, and it captured the emotional turmoil and intensity of the moment when Jesus announced that one of his disciples would betray him, right? So if you're looking at the image on screen, looking at the image, 3 to the left of Jesus in blue is Judas. And you can look at the faces of all these different folks, and there are lots of things out there that'll identify who all the disciples were at the time. But if you look at Judas, he's staring right at Jesus as he's reaching for a piece of bread. Nobody else is trying to grab anything at the moment, but Judas, man, he wants his piece of bread and his 40 pieces of silver or whatever it was. They paid him to betray Jesus. Anyway, Leonardo's mastery in conveying the complex emotions of each person at the table at the Last Supper through body language and facial expressions, it kind of draws you into the narrative and allows you to feel the weight of the moment, right? And that emotional depth, Leonardo had to manifest in his mind, right? Through empathetic engagement with a subject matter from the scriptures. And it demonstrates how emotional intelligence can elevate a piece of work from a mere depiction of an event to a profound, immersive experience. Anyway, I love that one too. Here's one you might not know about, and I want to use it to describe the behavioral aspect of workmanship, and that was Leonardo's study of human embryos, right? Kind of a little morbid, but he did a lot of dissections and all that. He did a meticulous study of human embryos. And these sketches are found in something called the Codex Atlanticus. And I believe they kind of exemplify the behavioral aspect of his workmanship. He did these, like I said, through dissections, and it showcases his really disciplined approach to observation and documentation. Once again, on the screen, you'll see not only these wonderful pencil drawings of human embryos, but also his notes all around each and every one of them as he learned and worked from word to picture, right? And that kind of commitment to rigor and documentation has a kind of a message for all of us when it comes to workmanship. I mean, it's all about discipline and the relentless pursuit of getting it exactly right. So last one, probably Leonardo's most famous work of art, and I chose this one for the spiritual aspect, is of course the Mona Lisa. And it encapsulates a lot of different things about workmanship, but beyond its unparalleled technical mastery, right? The painting is, the word that's always used is enigmatic, right? He wants to communicate something that's just a little bit beyond what we're looking at, right? Mona Lisa's elusive smile, right? And if you look beyond that to this ethereal landscape that sort of recedes into the background, reflect Da Vinci's contemplation of the mysteries of existence in the human experience. Now, maybe I'm stretching it, I don't know. But the painting definitely goes beyond the mere technicalities of what is basically a portrait, right? To touch on something more universal and spiritual, what was she smiling about? Who was this woman? Where was she from? What was the world like, right? Those are the questions that you elicit from just looking at this, right? And it demonstrates how workmanship can really be a conduit for exploring and expressing all things about human behavior. So let me wrap up this step back in time this way. Leonardo da Vinci's body of work, spanning from the scientific rigor of anatomical studies to the emotional depth of his paintings and his writings, it exemplifies workmanship in its highest form. I mean, this was a guy, a true Renaissance man, right? He was a painter, he was a scientist, he was a mathematician, he was a researcher, and he was an artist, right? He had a deeper exploration of the world and his place within it, right? I mean, the Vitruvian Man, the Last Supper, all the drawings and research on embryos, and the Mona Lisa. I think Da Vinci demonstrates that true workmanship is about blending all these things, right? Psychology, emotions, behavioral discipline, and spiritual inquiry. I think, if anything, Da Vinci's legacy teaches us that workmanship is more than a job skill, right? It's a way of engaging with the world that elevates both the creator and the observer. And it challenges us to see beyond the surface, right? Which is what we're trying to do here on this podcast, and appreciate the profound interconnectedness of all things so that we can elevate our performance and frankly, our happiness and our satisfaction and contribute more. Well, that's a wrap on episode 21. And I want to thank you for joining me on this journey. High-level discussion of workmanship, which we're going to dive deeper into a good bit in the first half of season 2. I hope you found some of this stuff insightful, and it'll help you take control of your work, engage with your personal pursuit of meaning and mastery, and make the most of every day. So please, if you enjoyed today's episode, share it with somebody who might need a little inspiration to re-engage with their work in life, and encourage them to subscribe to our podcast here for more insights into the art and science of living well. So until next time, I'm Dr. Tony Kern, reminding you to make each moment count, and I'll see you soon.